Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, and this is a Record All Monsters quick look at 1955's Jujin Yuki Otoko, aka Half Human, a story of the abominable snowman. From time to time, there will be films that are influential to the time we occupy in this history of giant monster movies, but for one reason or another don't quite qualify for a full episode. There are several reasons Jujin Yuki Otoko, aka Half Human, the story of the abominable snowman, fall under this category, and once I'm through explaining what this film is, I'm sure you'll see what I mean. Like I said in our episode discussing Godzilla Raids Again, Ishiro Honda was otherwise occupied and unable to direct that film. It is widely believed that he was occupied developing Project S, which stood for Snowman, which had begun production around the same time as 1954's Godzilla. Half Human, as I'll be referring to it now, was written by Takeo Murata, who had worked on the screenplays for both Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again, with science fiction writer Shigeru Kayama, who had also been on the writing team for the first Godzilla film. In addition to that, he had penned several stories about the cryptid the Orang Pendek, a 3-foot ape man from the jungles of Sumatra. Two of these stories, according to John LeMay's Big Book of Japanese Monster Movies, The Lost Films, were Revenge of the Orang Pendek and Fate of the Orang Pendek, and they served as the basis for the screenplay, in which an expedition in the Japanese Alps searching for the abominable snowman goes wronger and wronger. I know that's not a word, but that's what happens. The expedition is buried in an avalanche, and when one of the explorer's sisters comes along with her boyfriend to look for them, a group of carnies and some rural mountain people give them more trouble than they were expecting. This movie has obsessed me for almost 7 years at this point, so forgive me if this quick look isn't quite as quick as most others. I first heard about this movie in the summer of 2014, as I was doing my own Bigfoot research, traveling down from Ontario through New Jersey, back home to Texas, then up to Illinois. Now, none of these places are known for Bigfoot sightings, but that's not why I was traveling. My travels were incidental to the entirely academic research I was doing for a short story I wrote that hasn't and likely will not ever be published. In my research, I encountered Will Laughlin's review of the original Japanese version of this film on his website, braineater.com, which will be linked in the description. That in turn led me to the review of the film's Americanized release by Liz Kingsley on the website And You Call Yourself a Scientist. That review will also be linked below. I've always had a love for movies that present something forbidden, dangerous, or perverse, more out of curiosity than an actual interest in what was being depicted. Why do I bring this up with Half Human? Well, because Toho has self-imposed a ban on this movie, due to its insensitive portrayal of the Barukumin, a cultural minority within Japanese society made up of people who work near and around death, such as undertakers, executioners, meat cutters, and slaughterhouse workers, who were placed at the bottom of the social system in Edo period Japan. And while official discrimination against the Barukumin ended with the Meiji Restoration in 1871, the societal effects of their long-standing status as outsiders reach all the way to the present. All you have to do in order to see that illustrated is watch their scenes in this film, where they're portrayed as inbred mountain hicks with very visible physical deformities. The ban on this film, or huin, meaning seal in Japanese, dates back to the late 80s when it was being considered for a home video release. Outside of a few repertory screenings, such as the Nishiro Honda Film Festival in 1997, the film is still officially unavailable worldwide. Sometime in the 90s, a timecode stamped version of the film was leaked online, and if you know where to look, it can be easily found. But now that I have tracked down this film, both versions of it, It doesn't quite live up to my expectations. Between a very simple story without much nuance, so much hiking, and the much more problematic than expected portrayal of the Barakumin, even the Japanese version suffers. But with Ishiro Honda at the helm, it feels like more of a sequel to Godzilla than Godzilla Raids Again does. Of special note is the abominable snowman himself, portrayed in a great suit that features an expressive face mask designed by Ohashi Fuminori, and performed by him under the name of Sanshiro Segara. Would that Toho's version of King Kong looked this good in 7 years. And finally, the less said about the American version, the better. It's as bad as you've heard, if you've even heard of it at all. Seek this one out if you're curious, but only the genuine article, and be aware of its many problems. No amount of John Carradine is worth the mess that the American version is. That's it for this quick look at Half Human. Once again, I want to thank Henri Hata for all her help with the pronunciation and sensitivity regarding how I addressed the Barakumin. We'll be back next Friday, hopefully with Ray Hanley, to talk about the Giant Claw. We had some trouble getting that recorded this past weekend because of the weather. We're down here in Texas and we had a snowstorm. People don't know how to drive here in the snow. So I know some of you all outside of Texas are going to have a hard time believing that. But yeah, we completely shut down whenever it snows. And so we postponed that. We'll get that done for you guys. So that's next week. And we're really excited about that. Don't forget about the Rondo voting. If you want to help us in that way, we'd be so thrilled to be nominated for that. So send an email to taraco@aol.com. It's TARACO@aol.com, and say, hey, heard y'all are having some trouble getting nominations together. I'd like to recommend Record All Monsters podcast. And in 2 weeks, we'll be having another Monster Mailbag, so let's see if we can stuff that bag a little bit. Send us some emails. Talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You can find us on those sites, at Monsters Record on Twitter, search Record All Monsters Podcast on Facebook, and at recordallmonsters.pod on Instagram. And the email address for us is recordallmonsterspod@gmail.com. That's it. That's all I have to say to you this week. But come back next week where we'll talk about the Giant Claw with Ray Hanley. And don't forget that monsters are your friends.